Hey guys, Freak of Nature here, bringing to you today the first ever episode of Dota 2 Report Card, where we compare two teams that are about to face up against each other. Now we're looking at the Kiev Major, so we have the 13th seed Team Faceless against the 4th seed TnC. Now this is a very hyped C matchup, but I have to warn you guys that I am a Singaporean and I naturally support Faceless, but don't worry guys, I'm not biased, I assure you. Now to compare the two teams, we actually have a few benchmarks, I believe two of them, and the first of which is actually what the meta is. Now the meta will actually tell us what picks are actually reliably good and which picks are unproven. So if a team picks within the meta, they can reliably expect a certain result, and if the team is picking outside of the meta, they're actually trying to counter pick. Now RV2000 said on the Kiev panel that Dota 2 is a relativistic game, that you don't have to be the best team in order to win, you just have to be the better team in order to win the series, right? So at TI5, CDEC and EG proved this because CDEC couldn't play Lestrade, who was very much in the meta at the time. EG realized this and used that as a point of weakness to defeat CDEC 3-1, even though they lost to them 2-0 in the upper bracket. So moving on, we're looking at the opponents the two teams faced. Thankfully they both faced 4 different opponents, 2 of which were the same, EG and Virtus.pro, which makes our comparison much easier because TnC, as you can see, swept EG 2-0 and they get 1 point because of that. While Faceless, they almost managed to close out EG 2-0, but they didn't meet their timings in the game, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. Now Virtus.pro beating both TnC and Faceless 2-0. Now this can mean that Virtus.pro is either a super strong team, or it can also mean that the CIS meta is very well matched against the Southeast Asian meta game. Now, looking at Faceless, the biggest question we should ask is, can they get it together in the main event? Well, we can see that Faceless won 3 games in total, 2-0ing the bottom seed SG Esports, thankfully redeeming themselves a bit after losing that first series against Virtus.pro and taking 1 game off EG, but they get 0 points because they could have won against EG, but they just imploded, right? In game 1 and game 3, Faceless, they didn't quite get their timings right, especially in game 1, which I'll talk a bit more about. We saw T-Burn Siva on the panel talk about the Brood Mother who went Radiance Octarine when Black was already very farmed at around minute 20 to 30, where he had a BKB, Blink and a Manta Style ready to siege the high ground, but Ice decided to go back for the Radiance. He didn't build up to the BKB to help Black siege the high ground together. Now, Faceless likes farming. They will have if they have a lane advantage, they will immediately back off, they'll defend their jungle, they'll adopt a defensive position, start farming to gain a further advantage to close out the game comfortably. Now this is actually a weakness because the mid-game team fights have become so common that more or less when Faceless, they are forced to fight, they don't quite have the items because they just build farming items, or they are all not together to meet the team fight. So as a result, I would say that Winter's coaching has not changed Faceless's gameplay at large, has not solved their weaknesses of not being able to 5-man effectively. Now looking at the picks and bans, there is actually a very interesting draft methodology applied by Faceless, is that they will always secure a hero for XY in the first 3 picks. Now I attribute this to XY's Shadow Hero pool because he's just recently rejoined the pro scene. Now he is 7k, he is a very skilled player, he used to play with Scythe and Zenith, but the lack of exposure has led him to be unable to play many heroes at the highest level of competition. So as a result, they get a 0 because too much priority is given to secure a hero for him. Now they have very prepared bans against specific teams. We saw the IO ban against Liquid as well as EG, which made the EG game actually very close because of the targeted bans. so they get 1 point for that. But they have never played Monkey King, Lina, Io, and Ember Spirit, which I'll talk about more in a while. But for Monkey King and Io, it's because neither Nuts nor XY play both heroes, and Monkey King is usually played on the 4 position, which XY is playing. XY has tried to play Monkey King, but they have 0 wins on Monkey King on the international level. Same for Lina. Now XY has very shallow hero pool, and it's Trend Protector, Monkey King, Earth Spirit, and Spirit Breaker. And the problem with that is that Spirit Breaker, he also played Keeper of Light during the group stage, by the way. Spirit Breaker has 0 wins on international stage, and in group stage they played Spirit Breaker as well and lost all the games on Spirit Breaker. So now I'll talk a bit about Ember Spirit. Japs is really good at Ember Spirit. Now I don't know why they didn't play Ember Spirit during the group stage. They might be trying to save it for the main event, maybe trying to fly under the radar a bit. But Japs being great on Ember Spirit is actually belying a certain problem that Faceless has, and it's that they are very bad at 5-man Dota. They like chaotic team fights, they like spread out team fights, which is why Black's most well performing hero is actually the Slark, and for Ice Size is Timbersaw, and for Japs is the Ember Spirit, right? 3 very mobile heroes who can deal a lot of damage with very little commitment. That's why I say the 5-man of Faceless is actually a problem. They don't seem to be able to work very well together. But I think with a bit more time, and hopefully at the main event, they will show me to be wrong in this case. Now, looking at TnC, they stumbled through the Swiss a bit, but they managed to float to the top. And I say stumble because it wasn't a very convincing performance by them, even though they managed to eke out wins. But they get 1 point for getting into the upper seat, but they don't get a point for losing the first game consistently against Thunderbirds and against DC. No, that might be a sign that they're trying to try out a certain draft strategy, maybe a counter draft, but them losing, it shows a sense of inconsistency, right? You're not able to sweep your opponents, which means that you're not an extremely strong team. So another weakness I found from them was that they tended to favor passive supports rather than active supports. Now this is a problem because the metagame is right now centered around team fighting, and more often than not, having a defensive support means that you won't have enough damage to kill off enemy heroes in the mid-game team fights, in the early game team fights. Now they do have a very super structured draft, which hides their strategy quite well thanks to their analyst and coach Kip Seal, so they get +1 for that. Now looking at their picks and bans, it is quite unique. They don't quite comply to the typical picks and bans of the meta, and they still manage to perform quite well, which is in this case shows that their counter picks are working out, and TnC as a whole, as a team, they can perform well enough together that they don't need to rely on the meta to define their gameplay. So they have very obvious comfort heroes, the Dazzle and the Nyx, very common picks, and very high win rates. But I would say both heroes are defensive after the early game stage, right? Dazzle can always skill Poison Touch to harass at the early stage. Nyx Assassin has that level 6 power spike of Vendetta ganks. But because they've been picked so often, it establishes a pattern, and they might actually rely on these types of defensive heroes to complement their draft. Now they have prepared bans against specific teams. Once again, very good bans against EG. I believe the IO and Alchemist bans were against EG, and the 2 other IO bans were against VP, but they didn't manage to win the games, but still get 1 point because they've prepared well against the teams that they are up against, which I assume they'll prepare well against Faceless as well, of course. And they have never played these 3 heroes, Invoker, Trend Protector, and Warlock, which is a big problem because I view TnC as a very aggressive, team fighting oriented team, and these 3 heroes fall within that category. Now Invoker has plenty of spells, just a bit of coordination. He can be a Swiss Army knife of a hero, he can do ganks, he can participate in split push, he can be a monster in team fights with tornado combos, whatever. Trend Protector, about the same. He does have Leech Seed for early ganks, he has Overgrowth for team fight, and he has that X option to become a split pushing demon. For Warlock, Fatal Bonds and the Golem. Not much to explain about that, just a very good support hero for team fights. Now we might see them pick it in the main event, but for now, based on the stats, they don't play the hero. Now by the cards, the final total, TnC should pick it over Faceless. Most people, I'm sure you'll be saying that no, Faceless is a gatekeeper, Faceless is TnC's nemesis, and I would say that you're absolutely right. We do have to keep those facts in mind that TnC is 4 losses, 1 win in the last 5 games against Faceless, and all 4 losses were actually BO3, especially relevant since the main event is a BO3 series. Faceless actually took the first KF qualifier spot away from TnC, which makes it even worse and sets them up, you know, in this nemesis rival relationship kind of thing, you know. TnC does have Kips now helping them to do their drafts, which I think effectively makes it an even playing field. Now TnC does have some problems drafting against a very unpredictable Faceless, very mechanically skilled, but I think if they stick to their team fight game plan, force Faceless to fight them 5-on-5, I think TnC can actually outplay Faceless quite reliably because of their very good teamwork. Now you can catch the KF Major TnC versus Faceless 3 PM SGT Philippine time as well as Malaysia time on twitch.tv/Dota Major. Now this graphic was from the TnC Pro Team Facebook page. You can give them a like, visit them, and I thank you for watching. Thank you for your patience. If you have any feedback, you can always leave it down in the comments below, or you can go to facebook.com/freakofnature, send me a message. I'll be more than happy to read your feedback and respond back to you as well. You can also tweet at me at freakofnature with a NAYTUR, because well, Freak of Nature was taken and I still wanted the name, you know, just so people can reach me. Tweet at me. All in all, if you want to work with me, you can send me a tweet or you can send me a Facebook message. I'll be more than happy to help you do some voice work. I'm also a freelance writer, writing for Spark360.com as well as redbull.sg. So if you want to do a collab article or you want me to run some stats with you, be more than happy to help. Just send me a message, and I hope to see you next time.